Hello, my name is Joshua Jamal Jones. This is UI 443, and the title of my proposal that I will be presenting today is The Print is in the Pudding. A little bit of background information about my proposal is I will be focusing on fingerprints, so here's some information about that. Uh, Fingerprints are persistent and unique, and they do not change over time. Even twins do not have the same fingerprint. There are three different types of fingerprints that can be found: a latent print, a patent print, and a plastic print. A plastic print is also considered a latent print. A latent print is a print that cannot be seen with the naked eye. A patent print is a print that can be seen with the naked eye. And after a fingerprint is collected, it would be after a fingerprint is collected, it would be entered into the AFIS, which is Automated Fingerprint Identification System that we have, and it's actually a national system that has been created. It helps and aids examiners during these examinations. After a fingerprint is entered into the database, it helps provide a quicker way to sort through unlikely matches. And the fingerprint also stays in the actual system. At first, it only stayed in there. It stayed in there forever. But now, if your print was ever taken and you were deceased, now the fingerprint would automatically be removed from the system. But there are a lot of deceased people that still have their fingerprints in there just because the system, was updated and over time, and so it's a lot of people that have already passed. Their fingerprints are still in there that we haven't confirmed to actually be dead because they weren't fingerprint after they were deceased. Here's the introduction. Within today's society, the population is increasing at a steady rate, which gives a correlation to crime. One specific way to identify some criminals is fingerprint identification. Fingerprint identification still is an expanding area within forensics, but within this proposal, we will be focusing on three things. First, we will determine what a gray collected print is. Next, we will look at fingerprints under different conditions. Lastly, we will determine how feasible fingerprints are under these conditions. The focus questions are, once again, what a gray collected print is, fingerprints collected under different conditions, and how feasible fingerprints are under these certain conditions, most likely in the court of law. A good collected print is, the idea behind a good collected print is a print being clear enough to be able to cross-examine the collected print, which is the found print, to the actual owner, so the person that the print belongs to. And you would be able to cross-examine these prints with each other by using a few identification points or markers. With a fingerprint, there are three different types of major types of fingerprints, which are designed. Well, there are three different types of major fingerprint designs, which are whorl, loop, and arch. And within this little couple of pictures that shows on the side, that within a fingerprint there's also details. So there's bipurification, edge, ridge ending, an enclosure, a ridge dot, and an island. There's also a few more, but these are just some to get your eyes used to marking and identifying some just by looking at it. Methods of processing different prints using these different techniques. The first technique is cyanoacrylate. The second technique is neohydrin. And the third technique is ALS, which is also considered as an alternate light source. It's just abbreviated. The cyanoacrylate is one of my favorite methods personally. Cyanoacrylate also can be referred to as superglue. This method is my favorite because it can obtain a fingerprint from an uneven surface or a rigid or jagged surface. It really doesn't matter as long as it's non-porous. And non-porous meaning that the surface that the fingerprint is on cannot absorb liquid. And so within this technique, an adhesive or super glue reacts with the moisture within the latent print in such a way that the latent print on the non-porous substance or surface was covered with a hard coating and encased the delicate ridge structure of the latent print. A little bit about science behind this technique is this latent print is harsh. It has harsh chemicals. The senior acrylate will evaporate the sweat that resides within the latent print, at the same time surrounding and adhering itself to the leftover residue of the latent print, which would be the amino acids or fatty acids in our proteins, resulting from this process with the white shell is left over the print. And this just means like a little, like the step by step would be, you would actually take your developing chamber, you'll take, which is also located within a lab, you would take an actual, some sort of aluminum pan, and you'll put water in it, and you would do a few drops of senior acrylate or super glue, which is the same thing. You can put a few drops of that in the actual solution of water that you just created, and you would put your item into the developing chamber. Within the developing chamber, and you would also take the aluminum tray, and you would, with the water and the super glue, and place that in the bottom of the developing chamber. And after it's placed in the bottom of the developing chamber, you would put the item at the top or hang it in there, and you will close the developing chamber, and you will let it process. And it takes about up to like 30 minutes depending on the size of the item that you're trying to process the latent print on. And from my experience, it didn't really take that long when I did it. I did it on something like a coffee mug when I did it, and it came right off of the coffee mug, and the coffee mug was also white. But to be able to actually see the print darker than what it is, to be able to take a photograph it and lift it off of there with something like tape, you can kind of define it more by using something like a powder, a developing powder, which I would use. In my case, I would use magnetic powder. And so after you do that, you can lift it right up off of the actual surface of the item that you used. And this is perfect because it does exactly what we would like. It does exactly what we're looking for. It does exactly what we're looking for a processing technique to do. It preserves the print, at least for a period of time. The next technique that we will use to develop a print is neohydrin. And this is used most likely on a porous surface, and a porous surface meaning a surface that will at least partially absorb some liquid. So within this case, it would absorb some liquid from the fingerprint, which would be the sweat from the fingerprint. And it uses chemicals such as neohydrin and developers. With this technique, the porous surface will normally be sprayed with neohydrin composed solution, which will attach itself to the amino acids within the latent print, turning it a bluish color. These chemicals react with specific components of latent print residue, such as amino acids and inorganic salts. Neohydrin causes print to turn a purplish color, which make them easily photographed. And so the downfall with this technique is the fact that it's time consuming and it takes a while to actually process. And that's the same thing from my experience actually personally using it. But there's a way around that. You can heat the paper up to, or the surface of your non-porous item, up to 80 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And I personally used a blow dryer when I did this technique, and it developed within like 5 to 10 minutes. It took a while at first, but 10 minutes max depending on the size of your surface. And when it says that the neohydrin from the solution that's sprayed onto the paper reacts with different materials within the latent print. So the body gives off natural oils and it also includes sweat within those oils, proteins, fatty acids, and amino acids. And within this case, the neohydrin reacts with the amino acids within the latent print that your item is encased on. The last processing technique that we would use is less chemically involved. It really more involves a light, and a UV light at that. So this method is called ALS, which is also considered alternate light source. And within using this technique, fluorescence occurs. And here it talks about it within this PowerPoint. Fluorescence occurs when a light of a certain color and light frequency strikes an object, and the object returns the light at different color and or frequency. This frequency is much weaker in intensity, and the light beam that is created. So to visualize the fluorescence, the crime scene technician must use filtration that blocks the visible light that passes the fluorescence, and the filtration in this case would be some sort of goggles. The one I use personally is like an orange set of goggles. And this example that I'm about to explain kind of sums up what my experience of using UV light involved. For example, if the visible light beam is blue, the filtration must be orange color, with the filtration, which again is the goggles. This blocks the intense blue light that passes the weak fluorescence. UV light, on the other hand, is visible, but it produces a visible fluorescence from certain objects and substances. No filtration is required to view the UV fluorescence, but eye protection in the form of clear or plastic lenses is recommended. So like a breakdown for this technique is it's mostly used because it is very quick, and actually it quickens the process of actually visualizing and being able to see a print in a large area. So you would just turn on the UV light, and in my case, I sat down and I actually put the UV light over the item that you're using. You're actually searching for the print on, and the UV light will also trigger the proteins, in this case, of the print, and the proteins of the latent print within the latent print that you're visualizing will fluoresce back through the goggles at a low intensity, and that's what makes them like glow or kind of stand out to you. And the orange lights or goggles that you're using will filtrate the blue UV light, which is damaging to the eyes. Next thing we'll be talking about is this information feasible in court? This type of information has earned its place in the courtroom since 1911, mainly because the science is there to back it up. The problem comes in when some analysts begin to speak falsely against their work. So what it needs to be recognized here is that this the science behind this is pretty accurate, and it stabilizes the evidence that's actually found. It's just kind of hard to believe someone in the courtroom if they're speaking against their actual results that are found, regardless of personal issues or how the analyst feels about a case. You must remain not biased at all times to be able to determine the truth of the justice system. Conclusion. Ending the results from this study explains that when a good lists what a good print is, it even lists different methods to be able to collect those type of prints under different conditions. It also discussed how feasible the results of the prints are in the courtroom, the limitations that come from this process, and the fact that there are a lot of disruptions when it comes to collecting print, giving distorted images of prints, and the difficulty came with this proposal when trying to actually find a graph, yet alone a study to map out how my proposal will take place. I was pleased with the results that I actually found, but I would have definitely liked to see some graphs or like timings or percent rates on the duration of how long a fingerprint is seized and kept in custody, and the degradation between it. Like, if a print is collected, how long does the actual print last? Like, does it last forever? Does it usually break down like within 2 weeks? Because sometimes the cases don't occur until months later, and you only have your work that was presented during the case to bring back up. But at the same time, I understand that there's degradation that occurs when a fingerprint is collected, regardless of how cautious an analyst is with the print.